Hello. So, just wanted to talk about some ideas about some of the things that have been happening this year. Uh, I've discussed elsewhere that there's spiritual ramifications to this. We're approaching the time for Mashiach. We have to bridge the gap between just Israel having the basic right to defend itself to the more spiritually higher goal to have Israel have religious independence and freedom of religion, so, to the point where uh, the Jews can build a Jewish temple on their Jewish temple mount. It doesn't sound radical if you ever read the Bible, but so, um, a lot of people use church and the division between church and state to nullify church whatsoever. But is well, if you nullify church, at least in the land of Israel, you shouldn't nullify synagogue. So that would be inappropriate. Um, so now the before you talk about building a temple, you have to first secure the security of the people and safety of humans. Um, so just wanted to mention a concept that I've talked about several times over the years. In my blog, Jerusalem Defender, back in the Bush administration and the Olmert administration, I was already discussing about a peace plan to create a one-state solution for Israel and the Palestinians. They can join together. However, this is the key factor, and this is also published in on IsraelNationalNews.com in a 2016 article called "Filtration of Terror." So there has to be a filter on terrorists. You can't naturalize terrorists. And so now, what is a terrorist? And what is a pool of people that you could naturalize to have a one-state solution? So to have a one-state solution, you have to have people you could trust. They're not going to try to kill people or trying to have a peace festival, stuff like that. So how do you select um, who's still in the side of civilization and who is willing to be proactive members of Hamas, like we saw on October 7th. So I used a parable in my blog about just as we could find a credit card, with a credit card company, they could find somebody who's more likely to be a good risk and less likely to be a good risk. So too, we could find people who are more likely to be a contributing member of a democratic society and who are less likely. So now, when you find the people who are very likely to be good people in civilization builders, so there shouldn't be a major opposition from them naturalizing and becoming a member of the state of Israel. Uh, they are ideal people, and remember the from a business perspective, good business recognizes the value of people. That's why there's a whole department called human resources. So, a good Arab could be a very good citizen of Israel. And a bad person, whether or not they're Arab, could be a terrorist. So anybody who's even slightly at risk, we wouldn't immediately naturalize. We'd wait to see where they want to, which part of the fence they want to get off of. So when I started to discuss this over 15 years ago, I was saying that it's possible a significant percentage, it didn't know for sure it would be 60% or 40% who would choose to be an Israeli rather than to be considered a terroristic criminal, and then naturalize and become a working member of the Israeli society. And I also mentioned that the radicalization is going to continue. I urged that there would be an interference and interruption with the continued um, education of Palestinian children, Palestinian Arab children, with pro-terrorist ideas had to stop being taught, and they had to stop being taught 20 years ago. And of course, government after government continued to just say, complain about it, but let the Palestinian Authority do whatever they like. So the Western civilization has sat back and allowed the radicalization of the Palestinian Authority. This problem we're having with Hamas now is the byproduct of allowing people to become corrupted from their youth. And you know, there were some cases where the Torah, now usually the Torah, wants everybody to survive, such as the city of Nineveh, right? Even an enemy city of Israel, God sent the prophet Jonah to save. But in some cases, God says, destroy them even onto the children, because God knows what's going to happen. So if you were not going to interrupt terrorist training, then you were creating terrorists, and God doesn't want that. And so what has happened is just a simple, natural, foreseeable byproduct that others and myself have warned about, and were not listened to. So if the education of the Palestinian children had been treated more with greater diligence and respect, then I think this never would have happened October 7th. So this is a shared guilt, I think, among the entire Western civilization, and um, not of the innocent people, and certainly not of the people who are complaining about. But but the problem is this. So now you no longer have a normal amount of expectation that most people could leave the terroristic ideology, at least at first. So what has to happen is a filtration of terror, and so maybe whether it's 30% or 10%, any amount that you could save, you could save. Now remember, Abraham, the mutual forefather of Jews and Arabs, he was praying for Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities, and the wicked cities destined for destruction. And he kept praying until God said, even if there's just 10 people, he would save the city for the sake of the 10 righteous people. So if we're talking about, millions of people, and 10% of that, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, good people waiting to be saved from terrorist leaders that are now starting to inculcate the generation that Western civilization is allowed to grow into terrorists. So it's really a moral responsibility, I think, to try to save these people from the terrorist population. Now, so this is very important. To throw away everyone, babies with the bathwater, etc. So now you're no longer emulating Abraham, because Abraham wanted to save people, and if it's like you're condemning people to be surrounded by terrorists. Now, is it your obligation to take care of them? Well, that's a separate issue. I mean, by international law, for example, the Israel is allowed to take retribution against Hamas completely, until its destruction. So, the line was crossed. But there's still other Palestinian people there, and but filtration of terror is a very important concept. I just want to mention one more idea about this, is that, remember, if you discriminate against a person because of their circumstance of birth, right? So that's a bigotry. That's could be racism, could be any kind of form of hate. But if you discriminate against a person because of their life, their not lifestyle choice, um, their the side of criminal justice that they choose. So the concept of criminal justice is that society must be able to separate the innocent from the guilty and protect the innocent. So this is a matter of criminal justice that the those who do not want to be under terror have the freedom to be rescued. Now, again, any kind of situation like October 7th, so then the innocent they automatically become at risk of collateral damage and at risk of um, other problems as well. But again, if the key is this, is that if you are discriminating against the person because of their choice for evil, it is not discrimination. It's criminal justice, right? So therefore, if you're going to discriminate, though, then we have to try to emulate Abraham and discriminate towards trying to save people as much as possible. However, when people use the gifts they are given, that we as a society gave them, and they use it to try to destroy, so that also negates the capacity to give a gift of even a quasi statehood. So, but again, the long term, I think the ideal would be having a one state solution. It's extremely hard to talk about a one state solution in the aftermath of October 7th, but the reality is, with filtration of terror, even if you didn't want a one state solution, even if people were trying to do a two-state solution, okay, filtration of terror would have meant that many innocent Palestinians would not have been at risk of collateral damage. They would have already been in Israel, or maybe they would have been moved from Gaza to parts of the West Bank, you know. But there's been no discrimination except to complain and allow the Palestinian Authority to brainwash children. Okay, that 20-year experiment has failed, so I suggest a change in that. Any
Absolutely.
questions?
Absolutely. Well, Rabbi, the Torah is always going to choose life,
Yeah.
and Israel has a right to exist,
Mhm.
and I am happy that at this time, in the midst of all of this destruction and terror and everything, that the nations are allowing Israel to be a nation that can defend itself and that can sustain itself, by itself. And I think that's the greatest thing is that the nations stay out of uh, being involved in this. We can only see, uh, corruption coming from the influence of outside nations to the sanctity of Israel.
Right, and Israel ultimately needs independence to be able to defend itself against enemies as per international law, and to have freedom of its own religion as per the ideals of Western civilization. Why is freedom of religion for every religion but Judaism? On the Jewish Temple Mount, there should be able to be a Jewish temple. So
There
uh,
should be, yeah.
yeah,
And
it would be nice.
I think what we're seeing is the establishment of that and establishing an Israel now that can sustain a temple and itself and have a place in the world community as Jews with a temple.
Yeah, and just I just want to, I mean, it's the thing that pains me because again, a lot of these kids who became terrorists, it happened on the watch of Western civilization and under the Oslo Accords, and Israel, United States you know, and if you take terrorist training away from of a child, and they become pure, innocent, and wonderful,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and now many of those became monsters. And what about the next generation, at least? Uh, let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. We know exactly what has to be done, and this is what I'm saying is consistent with the prophecies of the prophets of Israel. Again, the best intel I wrote in my blog, best intel possible is to look at what the prophets of Israel say. So the two things that will be is that Israel will be able to defend itself against its enemies, and that's starting to occur now, even with some pushback. Israel still today is battling Hamas. And nobody's actually trying to physically block that. Secondly, there has to be freedom of religion, so Israel could build the temple on the Temple Mount, which, according to the Jewish Bible, is a seal of peace. It's a guarantee of the era. When the era begins, the temple will be built and world peace will occur and endure for eternity. Eternal world peace depends on these two things, that Israel should be able to defend itself and Israel should be able to build a temple on the Temple Mount. And that is uh, what I mean, what else is there to say? Just along the way, if we could have more mercy by being smart, by being eager for criminal justice, and therefore we're having mercy on the children of the next generation.
Absolutely. Well, from your mouth to God's ears.
Well, I mean, again, what I'm doing is I'm basing it on the prophecies of the prophets of Israel, and therefore I'm just trying to correlate it to the my studies of international law, et cetera, et cetera. And so, in other words, God has basically already spoken this. I'm just like translating
Yeah,
it
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so, so,
from your reiteration to God's ears.
so from God's mouth to my mouth.
Uh,
So it's just but again, it's a future. It's a history of things to come. It's gonna be. It's just how many people have to suffer until we get there. I suggest nobody suffer.
yeah, and I think Hashem probably has that same suggestion. We, as human beings on this earth, tend to mess those plans up.
But there is a way. It's not a guesswork. You know it's not a path that we hope will lead to peace. We're talking about guaranteed peace. Just let these two things occur, and like it or not, Israel is defending itself. So therefore,
That's
the
right.
only step after this is Temple Mount. That is the once there's freedom of religion on the Temple Mount in favor of the Jewish people, whose Temple Mount it is, then we could have the Messianic era of peace. Again, the Jewish Bible Tanakh talks about eternal peace, not eternal damnation, salvation, not destruction. It's only in specific cases, and in most part in historically, the Jewish Bible talks about destruction, but in the future, guaranteed bliss. And otherwise, remember, there's many prophecies of like Isaiah chapter 2. Uh, we're talking about chapter 11 Isaiah, talking about messianic times, and how do we get to that time and in the time of guaranteed peace if there's no hope. So there's certainly hope. There will be hope. It's just a question of we have an opportunity to minimize the damage and minimize suffering of individuals, and we should do to the best of our ability. But the more we allow people and societies to be corrupted, the less kindness we're able to do for individuals. A one-state solution would be a kinder method than a two-state solution. And but if it's a two-state solution, we see from the prophecies of Ezekiel, for example, such as chapters 43, 48, that it cannot be in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. It's impossible to create an alternative country there and have world peace. I mean, so the stakes are pretty high. Israel needs the freedom to pursue what it needs. And what makes sense is that we have an opportunity to emulate Abraham and try to bring as many people as possible into the wonderful state of tomorrow. But first, there has to be filtration of terror. Again, we have to discriminate against the evil people because that is criminal justice. But we're not discriminating against people because of their backgrounds or their races. So it's only good. It's the
Absolutely.
ideal.
Well, I hope so. I hope we see it in our time, Rabbi.
God willing, yeah. And again, God guarantees there will be time when there is world peace, and it looks like it's coming soon because there's no alternative. Uh, if there is to be a large population in the world, and not not destroyed, so therefore the good has to be coming soon. And again, I said in our Torah classes together that according to a calculation of a Zohar, that at least 2 billion people will be serving God after the Messianic age enters. So that means, and it also mentions that other people will not necessarily be serving God, but God is merciful, so therefore they could still live. The key, though, is they don't try to interrupt. They don't try to hurt people. They're not cruel to people, and they don't try to stop God's plans. So we learned in Egypt, if you want to mess with God's plans, you're going to be messed with. So don't do it. Okay. All right. Thank you
Very
for
good, Rabbi.
talking
Thank
with
you
me.
very much.
Thanks, Russ.